Hey, welcome everybody. We're starting a little late here. Sorry about that. But we'll give everybody just a few minutes to join us. Let's see. Um, Test out the chat box. Tell us what part of the state you're joining us from. And we'll give it a few more minutes. I think we have everybody here. West Columbia, Lugoff, Charleston. Good. We've got some Columbia. We're also in Columbia. Our office is here in Columbia. Beaufort, awesome. I think Spartanburg, awesome. I think we've got everybody here. We'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to our Wild Webinar series. We have a bi-monthly series, so this is our webinar for the month of March. So thank you all again for joining us today. Just as a common courtesy, we'll be recording the webinar, so it will be available to watch on our YouTube channel. Your cameras and microphones will be off, but you're welcome to ask questions in the chat, and I'll be monitoring the chat box and taking breaks to answer questions. So put them in the chat when you can, and we will address them. And so with that, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Savannah Jordan with the South Carolina Wildlife Federation. I'm the Habitat Education Manager. And we have a very special guest that I'd like to introduce for our wild webinar today. Her name is Allyne Askins. She has served as the Refuge Manager for the Carolina Sandhills National Wildlife Refuge in Chesterfield County, South Carolina for 19, I guess this will be 20 years now. And prior natural resources positions, she's worked in Georgia, Alabama, Florida, New Mexico, monitoring and managing several listed or at-risk species, including sea turtles, wood storks, migratory songbirds, and other animals, especially the red-cockaded woodpecker. And she's originally from Charleston and received her bachelor's from Furman and her master's in forest resources from Clemson University. Her interests include prescribed fire leadership and advocacy, habitat restoration, and mentoring early career natural resource professionals. And so we're very excited to have her here with us today to tell us all about prescribed fire and how fire is used as a management tool to help wildlife. Like I said earlier, I'll be assisting with the logistics. So, like I said, you're muted and your cameras are off. And please use the chat box for any questions you may have. And be sure to click the option where your questions go to everyone. And I'll ask questions throughout, and we'll also have some time at the end for any questions we don't get to during. But once again, this webinar is being recorded, and we'll upload it to our YouTube channel afterwards. So we invite y'all to sit back and enjoy the presentation. And thank you so much, Lynn, for joining us, and I'll let you take it away.
All right. Well, thank you, Savannah. And I apologize to everyone for our tardiness. We had some technical difficulties that we had to work through. And Savannah's going to help me by advancing the slides. And we'll be real informal here. If you do have a question, go ahead and pop it in the chat, and Savannah can let me know. And we can answer questions throughout, or we can wait till the end. Either one is fine by me. So again, my name is Allyne Askins. I'm the manager at Carolina Sandhills Refuge, and it's hard to believe that I've been here for 20 years, but it's a great place to work, and it's gone by super fast. Today, I want to share with you how fire, something that's often feared and misunderstood, is actually one of the most important tools we use to support wildlife and restore ecosystems. The Sandhills landscape is truly built by fire, and prescribed burning is essential for maintaining healthy habitats. Go ahead. I'll just say next from here on out. All right. The Carolina Sandhills Refuge was established in 1939 and is an anchor property for the larger Sandhills Demonstration Project, which includes partners like Cheraw State Park, Cheraw Fish Hatchery, and Sandhills State Forest. On the map here, you'll notice Cheraw State Park On the eastern end of Highway 1, it's in purple. Chirral Fish Hatchery is in orange. The Sandhills State Forest is in green, and the Sandhills Wildlife Refuge is in pink. And the idea was that these lands would be set aside, it's about 100,000 acres, to provide for recreation, fisheries, wildlife, and multiple use. We work together as property managers to promote sustainable land management. And historically, this entire region was shaped by frequent fire, and our work aims to restore those natural processes across this landscape. Next. I apologize that our photo did not come across, but this was a picture of what the Sandhills looked like in the 1930s. If you can imagine, it was barren, cut over land, and immediately the staff began planting trees, building ponds and roads, and stocking wildlife such as white-tailed deer, wild turkey, and beavers. Staff also began using prescribed burning, although not as much until the 1960s, but prescribed burning is mentioned in historic management documents. Next. All right, so this area of South Carolina is dominated by the longleaf pine ecosystem. The longleaf pine ecosystem once stretched across 90 million acres from Virginia to Texas and evolved with frequent low-intensity fires, typically every 2 to 4 years. Today, there's only about 5 million acres left of the longleaf pine ecosystem, and we use fire and reintroduce it to help maintain the open park-like condition that you notice here. They're for grasses, wildflowers, and other species. The Sandhills is fire dependent, and without fire, dense hardwoods invade, ground cover becomes shaded out, habitat structure shifts from open pine grasslands to a closed canopy forest, and fire-dependent plants and animals decline. Prescribed burning restores and maintains the open park-like longleaf pine habitat that defines the Sandhills. If you look at this picture, you see mature longleaf in the canopy, scattered younger pines, few scattered shrubby trees, lots of grasses and forbs. The most important thing to note is the amount of sunlight that reaches the forest floor. Next. Fire is not just a tool, it is a natural ecological process. Fire improves soil health by recycling nutrients, supports diverse plant communities, and helps maintain biodiversity. Species that evolved with fire rely on it to keep habitats open, healthy, and productive. This photo illustrates a seepage bog where prescribed burns reduce shrub vegetation and trees that would shade out the herbaceous plants such as pitcher plants, orchids, sedges, and wildflowers. This bog habitat is important for species such as pine barrens, tree frogs, and prairie warblers. Next. So what is prescribed fire? Prescribed fire is the carefully planned and intentionally applied fire used in land management. Every burn is guided by a written burn plan that outlines safety measures, weather parameters, and ecological objectives. We only burn when conditions are appropriate for smoke management and containment. The goal is to mimic natural fire in a controlled, safe way that supports habitat and reduces hazardous fuels. Key elements of this definition, it's planned and controlled. These prescribed burns are conducted according to a written burn plan with safety measures. We must obtain a burn permit from the South Carolina Forestry Commission in order to conduct the burn. Another key element, it is purpose-driven. We use prescribed fire to reduce fuel loads, restore fire-adapted ecosystems, improve wildlife habitat, and sometimes prescribed burning can be used to manage invasive species. Prescribed burns are also weather-dependent. They can only be implemented under suitable conditions for smoke management and containment. Next. Our refuge serves as a demonstration site for how to restore longleaf wiregrass habitat, and we use a variety of tools, including fire management, ecological forestry, and restoration through silviculture. By implementing best practices, we demonstrate to partners and private landowners what effective restoration looks like. Next. On the Refuge, we burn an average of 12 to 15,000 acres annually, primarily from late January through April, although conditions allow burning year-round. Growing season burns, those that occur between March and June, are especially valuable for habitat restoration purposes. We use a mix of hand ignition, drones, and helicopter to accomplish our burning. Each burn is approved daily by the agency administrator after the burn boss presents the plan. Smoke management is always a top priority. Next. So how does fire create habitat? Fire helps reduce hardwood encroachment, which opens the understory and allows native grasses and flowers to return. This creates ideal nesting and foraging conditions for many wildlife species. Without fire, these habitats become overgrown and unsuitable for species that depend on open pine grasslands. Look at this side-by-side comparison. Prescribed fire maintains the open habitat that is required by many species by reducing the mid-story hardwoods, especially oaks, stimulating growth of native grasses and forbs, opening the forest floor for foraging wildlife to move about, and recycling nutrients back into the soil. Many priority species at Carolina Sandhills Refuge are completely dependent on these conditions. As illustrated by these photos, which habitat do you think is better? It's hard to move through one, and the other is lush and provides a buffet of insects and other forage materials. Next. So the refuge has an astonishing diversity of wildlife in these fire-shaped habitats. We have about 200 species of birds, 42 species of mammals, 41 species of reptiles, and 25 species of amphibians. Fire helps maintain the variety of habitats needed to support this rich array of wildlife. Next. The refuge is designated as a globally important bird area, which means this landscape is recognized on an international scale for its critical value to bird conservation. It tells the world the species found here, whether they're rare, vulnerable, or simply rely on the habitat for breeding, feeding, or migration, depend on this location. For Carolina Sandhills Refuge, this designation highlights the refuge's vital role in supporting healthy populations of birds that are tied to fire-dependent ecosystems, from the red-cockaded woodpecker to a wide range of grassland and pine forest species. It affirms the work that's done here, restoring longleaf pine, applying prescribed fire, and protecting natural communities has conservation impacts that reach far beyond the refuge's boundary. Next. One of the things I'm most excited about is that we have more than 1,000 species of plants on the refuge. It is so diverse here, and most of these plants are fire dependent or fire enhanced. Frequent burning maintains openings where wildflowers and grasses flourish. So some of the plants in this photo include orchids, milkweed, legumes such as the lupin that you see here, meadow beauty, flag iris, pitcher plants. It's incredible the diversity that is found, and fire only enhances that. Next. Oh, I see. There was a question in the chat about what, if you'll go back, Savannah, I'll answer that question about the orchid species. So the one on the second row, it's pink and it kind of has 3 prominent petals. That is actually a rose begonia, and that is a type of orchid. We also have the yellow fringed orchid, and I'm trying to think if we have anything else. White fringed orchid. And then historically in the past, we had pine lilies, but that plant hasn't been seen in a while. But yeah, there's just an incredible array of diversities. Some of the other plants here, I see liatris, pine barrens gentian, birdfoot violet. I get all excited about plants, so we can talk about plants all day. So, all right, next. All right, but we're going to talk about wildlife too, so that's important. Many species of wildlife thrive after fire, including the threatened red-cockaded woodpecker, northern bobwhite quail, Bachman's sparrow, eastern fox squirrel, and pine barrens tree frog, to name just a few. These species rely on open, frequently burned habitats that have plenty of grasses, insects, and a mature open canopy of longleaf pine. The red-cockaded woodpecker is one of the clearest examples of a bird that cannot survive without fire. Red-cockaded woodpeckers, or RCWs as we call them, require open pine grasslands with little to no hardwood midstory, mature longleaf pines for cavity excavation, and a grassy herbaceous ground cover that attracts insects so they can forage. Fire helps RCWs by removing the hardwood encroachment so that oaks do not grow up into the midstory, which can make habitat unsuitable and also allows nest predators easy access to cavities. Fire maintains the open, airy structure that RCWs require for flight, foraging, and group cohesion. Fire promotes native grasses that support insects and spiders that RCWs feed on. And fire sustains the longleaf pine life cycle by providing open conditions where seedlings become established. If there's too much canopy shade, longleaf pine cannot grow in the understory. Prescribed fire is so essential for red-cockaded woodpeckers that recovery plans specify frequent rotation-based burning as a cornerstone of management. But many other species benefit from frequent low-intensity prescribed burns, including northern bobwhite quail, which thrive in open grassy understories created by fire. Fire promotes seed and insect abundance, and we know from research that quail prefer areas that have been burned within the last 2 years for nesting and brooding, and abandoned habitat that has not been burned in 3 or more years. Bachman's sparrows nest in forage and wiregrass and other bunch grasses that are stimulated by fire. Eastern fox squirrels prefer the open pine stands because of the structure that is maintained by fire. And pine barrens tree frogs use seepage and canebrake wetlands that flourish when fire is introduced. Next. So how do we know this? How do we know that wildlife benefits from this management practice? We do a lot of monitoring on the refuge. And so I'm going to present some data here to you today about 2 species where we've done monitoring. So on the refuge, we have 173 active red-cockaded woodpecker clusters. We have the largest population of this threatened species on the National Wildlife Refuge System lands and the second largest population in South Carolina. This keystone species nests only in living pine trees and requires large, mature longleaf pine forests. Thanks to active management and prescribed burning, we've also been able to sustain and grow this population, and we've reached our recovery goal. Next. In 2002, we had 120 breeding groups. By 2024, the number had grown to 160, and our population is considered recovered. Because of the conservation success here and across the Southeast, the species was downlisted from endangered to threatened. This photo illustrates how we protect red-cockaded woodpecker trees during prescribed burning. We rake around each tree for a distance of 10 to 15 feet, depending on the height of the cavity. Then, during the burn, we burn off the vegetation that surrounds the tree before the advancing flame from the main fire reaches the cluster area. And to just give you a little bit of a hint of what a Herculean task this is, we have about 2,000 woodpecker trees on the refuge. And not every tree is in a burn unit that will receive fire every year. We're on a 3-year rotation. But the refuge fire crew rakes between 600 and 800 woodpecker trees annually to prepare for these burns. So it's a really tall order, but it's one that is valued. Next. We also monitor northern bobwhite quail. Our refuge serves as a quail focal area for the South Carolina Bobwhite Initiative. The aim is to demonstrate land management practices that improve economic and ecological value for landowners, benefiting bobwhite quail and other grassland birds such as Bachman sparrow. When we started this project in 2015, we only had one covey in our quail focal area, and our goal was to have 5 in 2020. We reached that goal, and so we updated our objective to reach 20 coveys by 2028. Next. This slide shows the population trend for northern bobwhite on the refuge. As habitat quality improves, we're seeing increases in covey numbers. Habitat improvements have included timber stand thinning, prescribed burning, brood plot planting, plum thicket cover management, and field disking. It's not just one management activity that's going to create the ideal habitat. We have to use a combination of management activities to reach optimal habitat, but prescribed burning is very important among these. Next. So, of course, prescribed fire comes with challenges. Our biggest challenge is smoke management, which is critical for safety and for public acceptance. We have to be responsible when we're burning to ensure that smoke does not impact roads or smoke-sensitive places like nursing homes, schools, and hospitals. Public perception is very complex. Some people worry about fire because they see images like the wildfire picture here on the nightly news, while others appreciate its benefits. Clear communication and visible results help to build trust with our public neighbors. These photos illustrate some of the challenges. There are more and more neighborhoods and communities that are built right adjacent to our natural and wooded areas that need fire. It is important to use prescribed burning under planned and controlled conditions to prevent wildfires, which are not predictable and can often become uncontrollable. Finally, we must educate folks about the benefits of prescribed fire. We like to say good fire, as opposed to bad fire or wildfire. Next. In our refuge's history, there were periods of fire suppression. When good fire is suppressed, bad fire or wildfires become common. In his book, Fire in America, Stephen Pine uses the Carolina Sandhills National Wildlife Refuge as a case study of how fire-dependent landscapes in the Southeast have been shaped by both natural processes and human management. He highlights the refuge as a place where longleaf pine ecosystems, once sustained by frequent low-intensity fires, were restored through intentional prescribed burning after decades of fire suppression. Pine points to the Sandhills as evidence of how fire can be reintroduced thoughtfully to recover ecological function, reduce fuel loading, and maintain the open fire-adapted habitats native to the region. Through this example, he illustrates the broader national challenge of balancing fire protection with the ecological necessity of regular burning. As you can see in this graph here, the blue line is the number of wildfires we had annually. And once we started a robust prescribed fire program, particularly in the 1960s and 70s, our incidence of wildfires has drastically decreased. Next. So the key takeaway is simple. Fire is essential for biodiversity in the Sandhills and in many southeastern ecosystems. It's a proactive conservation tool that protects both wildlife and surrounding communities by reducing fuel loads. And when we restore natural fire, we restore the ecosystem. At Carolina Sandhills, fire is not an emergency tool. It is a planned, essential ecological process that keeps the landscape healthy and supports a tremendous diversity of plants and wildlife. Next. Thank you for your attention. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, and my contact information is on the screen.
That was wonderful, Lynn. Thank you so much. It looks like we do have some questions. So we can go through some of those. Let's see. So our first question, what's involved in a cluster of nests?
Okay, that's a great question. So I didn't really get into the history of red-cockaded woodpeckers, but I'll share some since we've got some time. The red-cockaded woodpecker is a really unique animal in that it is a cooperative breeder. So what that means is that um, the whole family helps raise young. So in the case for the red-cockaded woodpecker, you have a male and a female. They're monogamous. They mate for life. And the female lays eggs in the male's cavity, and the female and the male help to incubate the eggs and then feed the chicks once they're hatched. Um, Once the chicks fledge, they stay with the family unit for a number of months. And then in the fall, the females are kicked out of the family unit. They go and find a mate. The males hang around and help raise the next year's brood of young. So this is a very advanced cooperative breeding system. So one of the things that's unique is that woodpeckers do not share cavities. Each woodpecker has to have their own cavity. And so if you have a male and a female and 2 or 3 helper males, you'll need at least 5 cavity trees. So that is what we call a cluster. Each cavity tree is an individual tree, and then the collection of cavity trees that are for that family unit is known as a cluster.
Yes, their dynamic is so interesting. It's amazing. All right. The next one is Dennis says, I guess I always wondered if the invasive fire ant is restricting bobwhite quail successful breeding. So can you speak to that at all?
You know, I can say on the refuge it is not, but I know other areas which really have a high density of fire ant colonies are probably feeling the effects of it because they are, they're ground nesting birds. And that's one of the beauties of prescribed fire too, because we have such a robust fire program here on the refuge. We really don't have the large colonies of fire ants that a lot of places do. I'm not sure how prescribed fire keeps the fire ants at bay. I'm not saying we don't have them because we do, but I've seen you can look at satellite imagery of places and you can actually see the fire ant mounds through satellite pictures. It's crazy. We just don't
Wow.
have that here. They're less frequent here, and I'm supposing there's nothing scientific behind this, but I feel like that prescribed fire and our frequent use of fire helps to keep the fire ants away and not build up as big a population as they have in other areas.
Yeah, fight fire with fire, right? Our next one is, would you recommend burning in South Carolina only between January to April to avoid interfering with wildlife baby season? So everything hatching out and growing and yeah, it's a good question.
Okay, so that is a very complex question, and on the refuge, we manage for populations rather than individuals. And so we know that there are instances, probably when we're burning in March and April, where we might burn up a quail nest or a turkey nest. What we know about those birds is they do renest. And one of the things that's also in South Carolina, and I don't have the figures, but we could certainly get them. But I know that in South Carolina, we're supposed to be burning something like 1 million or 2 million acres a year to keep up with what's needed. And we're only burning like maybe 500,000 across the entire state. And most of that is on public lands. So we're very much behind in our burning. And so I always say burn when you can burn, regardless of what season it is, because the benefits of prescribed fire far outweigh the temporary or temporal losses that you'll have on an individual burn or an individual wildlife species. One of the things I find really interesting is right after a burn, the amount of wildlife that is actually using a burned area. They're going in there, they're grubbing for insects. Of course, if you can imagine, they can see for miles because the vegetation's been removed, and so they know they're aware of predators more quickly than in a more dense environment. So, while that question is complex and it's really up to individual land managers what their goals are, on the refuge, we burn every day that we can. We like to say every day is a burn day because in reality, we have 365 days a year, and we really only have about somewhere between 35 to 50 days a year we can actually do burning.
Thank you. So our next one, yes, so Patty was wondering just about the mortality with animals with burning, but you explained that very well. Our next one is about how certain places or even countries don't do prescribed fire. Can you explain maybe what reasonings there might be against that?
It's I think it's a cultural thing in the Southeast. If you've lived in the Southeast long enough, perhaps you're familiar with farmers burning off fields, getting ready to plant. I grew up in a neighborhood where people would burn their yards off to have a fresh green lawn coming in the late spring. So a lot of people don't do that anymore because we have urban situations now. But culturally in the Southeast, it's not uncommon to have fire. But then in some other areas of the country, fires have been suppressed. And then you see the scary images of wildfires on the news, and you see people losing their homes and everything. And so people are afraid of fire. And so, and also there have been some controlled burns in areas that have gotten out and have caused problems. And so, it's a delicate walk that we do, trying to implement fire and do it in a way where we can build trust with our communities, because we know that if we use prescribed fire, there are less wildfires. And so we're hoping that, in South Carolina, we have a really good reputation for burning. We're hoping that practice is expanded across the United States, and we start to get prescribed fire in these other areas of the country where fire's been suppressed and we are having catastrophic wildfires. And I did want to address Patty's question too. Most wildlife that can fly or run or is mobile, they sense the fire's coming, so to speak, when we light a unit. And so you will often see, a lot of birds and deer running out of the fire and getting away. And of course, there's some smaller species like, lizards and whatnot that probably do not make it out, but they'll go underground and that type of thing. So we do lose some critters during prescribed burning. But like I said, a lot of wildlife are extremely curious, and they'll come right in after the burn and start using the habitat.
Yeah, and kind of along those same lines, our next one is, does South Carolina do any burns near neighborhoods? Um, there's local preserves, and locals have warned it's a matter of time before houses become vulnerable. Jenny here is asking this. She wants to try to convince their HOA about protection, any necessary protections, and that it's also good for the environment.
Right. So one of the things you can do as a landowner, if you live near a natural area, is we have a the South Carolina Forestry Commission has a pamphlet called Fire Wise, Being Fire Wise. And it talks about things you can do as a homeowner to, make your property less prone to, wildfire. So, for example, you don't want to have a continuous vegetation between the property line and your house. You want to reduce the shrubs around your house. Instead of using pine straw as mulch around your house, think about using like white gravel rocks. Think about not having like thick vegetation, but more like maybe cactuses and different vegetation that's more sparse, that's not going to burn. And a lot of natural areas, I'm thinking of Horry County right now, they have very active Firewise community information, so that when they put a neighborhood in, before the homeowners even come in, like when they're working with the developer, they'll make sure to have like a 30-foot fire break between the natural area and the community. They also put in guidelines to not have things like vinyl siding or things that really will succumb to high heat or flames in an advancing wildfire. So, and if your community has a natural area, I would encourage you to get with that property manager and find out if that property manager has any interest in contracting with the South Carolina Forestry Commission or a private company that conducts prescribed burning, so that they could go in January or February during a very controlled time and implement a prescribed burn that would reduce fuels. I'm sorry. Oh, there was a fire going. But anyway, if you could go in and proactively manage those fuels before a lightning strike comes in and causes a wildfire.
You said y'all have a fire going right now?
Yeah, we're doing a prescribed burn right now, so I apologize.
Good.
I forgot to turn my radio off.
Oh, good timing. Yeah. Um, yeah. So our next one, let's see, what's the brief history of Native Americans' use of the prescribed burning in the Sandhills?
Yes, so just like other Native American populations, they used fire primarily to keep the woodlands open and drive game. Um, but even before, Native Americans, fire is a natural process. And so, the Sandhills region has one of the most active lightning seasons in the country. If you look at the lightning maps for South Carolina, it's kind of crazy. And so our lightning season is March through primarily through June, but then it can even go into July and August with the thunderstorms. But what's different between March through, say, May, and then the June through August is when you have the thunderstorms June through August, they're often accompanied by lots of rainfall that will squelch the wildfires so that they don't grow. Whereas if you have lightning strikes in March, April, May, it's often dry lightning, which will ignite the fires. So that's one of the ways we know that fire was part of the natural history of the Sandhills back before humans, is because this phenomenon of this weather phenomenon, which, fires could lightning would ignite fires and they could burn across the landscape. There weren't houses, there weren't roads, there was nothing to stop the fire except creeks and streams and bodies of water. And then, once the fuel was gone, then there was nothing else to burn. But Native Americans came along and saw how fire created these open lands where you could see for miles, and also it helps drive game, and so it was good for hunting.
Yeah, awesome. Our next one, lots of really good questions here about fire ants. Oh, Jenny mentioned that the turtle nest volunteers there say that they prey on the nests on Florida beaches. Yeah, yeah, fire ants are quite a predator of many different types of species. Um, Okay, our next question from Mark. So he's talking about or asking about the oversight of these prescribed fires. So, can you tell us a little about like the management, like who oversees the burns,
Sure.
individuals? He says like with large tracts of land. Um, are they like maybe qualifications that they would need to
Yeah.
initiate fires without oversight or permissions?
Sure. All right. So in South Carolina, we have a program called a certified prescribed burner. You
Mhm.
attend a class and then you have to oversee at least 5 burns under the supervision of a qualified burner. So, and then that's just a private landowner. A private landowner can go to a certified prescribed burner workshop and work with either another landowner or and another forester or individual who is qualified to oversee a burn and get signed off on your 5 burns, and then you can lead a burn. Every time we do a burn, we have to call the South Carolina Forestry Commission, and we have to provide our certified prescribed burner number, and that permit is attached to the certified prescribed burner. So if something goes wrong, you have liability for that burn. So if someone has a car wreck because of smoke, if the fire gets out, if the fire does any damage, the certified prescribed burner is responsible. So the certified prescribed burner also needs to have liability insurance to cover those contingencies. So on federal land, we have very strict requirements. So to be a burn boss, and there's different types of burn bosses. There's the most highly qualified as a burn boss one, but most of the burns on the refuge require a burn boss two, which is still a very hard bar to reach. Very hard bar to reach. Excuse me. I'll give you an example. Our burn bosses probably work an average of 5 to 7 years before they're qualified to lead a burn on their own.
Mhm.
So while it's pretty easy to become a certified prescribed burner, to lead a burn on a large tract of land like a national wildlife refuge, you have to have many, many years of experience and additional qualifications. And that's why a lot of landowners will hire a company that does prescribed burning or contract with the South Carolina Forestry Commission because of liability concerns, and then because wanting to have the right qualifications to lead the burn.
Yes, thank you. So our next one, oh, Mark says, life goal, become a burn boss. Yes, that's a good life goal. Um, and Jenny, is sharing some knowledge. She says that, you can follow Wetland Preserve on Facebook. It's a Florida family that conserves thousands of acres and serves, on the North Florida, Prescribed Burn Association, and she's learned a lot from them. So that's a great resource as well. Thank you. And oh, Caroline's asking if there's going to be any more of those prescribed burn workshops this year, or where can they find more information about those? Or it looks like Mark added a link to the bottom. There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark. Let's see. So yes, that's where you can find more information about that program. Um, Yes, and Mark says they've been looking at it. Looks like registration for next year will open in August, and they're filled for this year. So it's popular, so that's good that people are using that. Um, so it looks like that's all of our questions. Does anybody else have anything else any other questions they want to pop in the chat before we conclude here? Or anything else, Lynn, that you'd like to share or think of?
I'd like to thank everybody for your questions. They were really good questions, and I'm excited that folks are so engaged about prescribed burning. And I hope that you will, talk to your neighbors and tell them the benefits of prescribed burning, and work with any of your adjacent lands to make sure that they're doing good management, and that you're also practicing firewise management of your own properties.
Yes, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lynn. That was wonderful, and we're just grateful for your expertise and knowledge that you shared with us um, about how prescribed fire is so beneficial in managing our wildlife habitat for wildlife specifically here in South Carolina. Um, if there's any other questions that you guys have that come up, feel free to reach out to us. On the screen here, you can see our email address for the South Carolina Wildlife Federation. And we'd love to know how we did. So definitely go to this QR code and fill out a short feedback survey. And we hope you all enjoyed this and learned something new. I definitely learned a lot of new things. Yes, we're proud to be able to bring these webinars to the public on various topics. And these are all on our YouTube channel. So this one's going to be uploaded to our YouTube channel if you'd like to share it or watch it again. And if you did enjoy this webinar, we would love to hear from you. And we also greatly appreciate any financial support. So please consider making a monthly donation or one-time donation to the South Carolina Wildlife Federation so we can continue offering these free webinars. We will send out a follow-up email with more information about how to connect with us and a link to this webinar. And our next one is going to be April 29th at 7:30 p.m. We're going to have a really awesome guest speaker presenting about the fireflies of South Carolina in preparation for firefly viewing season. So if you've ever wondered why you're not seeing as many fireflies in your backyard and how you can help them, you won't want to miss it. So thank y'all so much for attending this webinar as a part of our fall webinar series, and we hope to see you on the next one. Thank you again so much, Lynn. Thank y'all, everybody.
You appreciate you.
All right. Bye-bye.